Let's move on to UK news now, because the upcoming US trip for the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Ahead of this, he has signalled support for his Defence Secretary Ben Wallace as NATO's next chief. Well, while interacting with the press, the Prime Minister was asked if he would push in Washington for Wallace's appointment. Sunak did not directly answer, but did heap praise on his 53-year-old cabinet colleague.
Ben does a fantastic job. He's a great defence secretary. This is a conversation that is happening amongst leaders around the world more generally, and I'm sure it will continue to happen. I would say Ben is widely respected amongst his colleagues around the world, particularly for the role he's played in Ukraine and supporting Ukraine. And Britain has always been a leading contributor to NATO.
Wallace, a former captain in the British Army, is seen as a leading contender to replace Jens Stoltenberg, who will retire as NATO Secretary General in October after 2 terms. Well, during a visit to Washington on Wednesday and Thursday, Sunak will reportedly lobby US President Joe Biden to back Wallace for the role. The US is the dominant force within the 31-member military alliance, and its endorsement is crucial for whoever takes the top job. Well, moreover, Wallace, who has travelled widely as the Defence Secretary, enjoys a good rapport with US officials. Last month, Wallace appeared to show an interest in the NATO post, telling German news agency that it's a job he would like. Well, according to reports, Denmark's Prime Minister, who meets Biden in Washington as well, is also thought to be in the running for this, as she aims to become NATO's first female chief. Well, last year, she emerged as a staunch supporter of Ukraine in its war against Russia. This gained her international recognition and respect for her efforts to strengthen Western unity. She has visited Ukraine 3 times since the war broke out in February 2022. Denmark has also given significant financial and military aid to Ukraine. Well, despite the fact that there is a major shortage of defence budget in the country itself as well, this unfortunately happens to be a main obstacle, though, for her potential candidacy, as Denmark has come under pressure to increase its military spending up to 2% of GDP, which is a key goal for NATO member states. Well, let's get more on this. We are now joined by Ben Wallace. We're not joined by Ben Wallace. We're going to talk about Ben Wallace. We have now got Greg Swenson here, an international affairs expert, joining us on the line live from London. So, Ben Wallace, now I remember when he was potentially in the running to become a leader of the party. He was very popular within the Conservative Party to go for leader, but he said he didn't want it. He wanted to concentrate on his family. He was very much dedicated to the role of Defence Secretary. Do you think that maybe that's because he had the eyes on the bigger prize and was going for NATO potentially?
Perhaps. And I think, Ben Wallace has a great reputation, as you said in your introduction. He's got a great reputation in the defense community globally, but also a great reputation here in the United Kingdom. So, yeah, I'm not sure that's why he, declined to run for prime minister, but surely I think he'd be a great leader for NATO.
Apologies there. We've got a slight delay with our technicals today. When it comes to the situation in Ukraine, do you think that Ben Wallace will be very much missed, though, if he does give up the Defence Secretary role?
Well, I think so. I mean, look, he's clearly a great leader in terms of the defense movement here in the United Kingdom, but I think he'd be even more powerful in the role in NATO and perhaps more useful. I think it's important to note that the UK, as well as the US, obviously, have been leaders in the defense spending in the NATO countries, and it is a challenge. You mentioned the fact that Denmark has not contributed 2% of GDP. Only 9 countries in NATO have, and I think that should be a real issue that Ben Wallace or whoever takes the role can lead the charge on that, because clearly the organization is not living up to its commitments. Outside of a handful of countries, notably the US and the UK historically, but also Poland, which is probably going to hit 3% of GDP. But the average right now is 1.3%, and that's completely underwhelming. And I think the next NATO leader has to really get his or her arms around that and make sure that the countries in NATO are living up to their commitments.
Okay, Greg Swenson, thank you so very much indeed. We appreciate your expertise. International affairs expert joining us live from London today.